Shabbat Shalom. Oh, come on, you guys better than that. Shabbat Shalom. Very good, thank you. So, there's a saying, everything new is old, and everything old is new again, or something. Anyway, I got a new smartwatch, okay, which is always on. It is actually, first smartwatch I had was a Pebble, okay? The Pebble existed from 2016 to 2019, and then it was, well, anyway, Pebble is back. I have one. It's always on. I don't know if it'll do any good, but at least I can see how long I've been talking. So, I have spoken before about my mentor, Father Jim Walsh, who was a professor of theology at Georgetown, who was a Jesuit priest, and he came to my ordination. And right after my ordination, he came up to me and he bowed his head and he asked me to bless him. Which it was a little weird, actually, to me, both because it was not like something. I mean, I've been a rabbi for like all 30 minutes, right? But it's not, I mean, priests are used to it, rabbis not. So I didn't know what, I was honored, but it was also a little weird. From down and I blessed him. And what does it mean, like, to bless another person, right? And so, we have the Birkat Kohanim, right, where those of us who are Kohanim, and speak of arbitrariness, right? I mean, are Kohanim like better in any way than anybody else? No. I mean, you could be learned, you could be not so learned, you could be righteous, you could be not so righteous, right? But as long as you haven't killed anybody, literally, you can participate, right? But why? Because the Torah makes it very clear that the Kohen is not the source of the blessing, right? The Kohen is the conduit for the blessing, right? It says in Numbers chapter 6, verse 27, V'samu et shemi al b'nei Yisrael va'ani avarhem. Okay, they shall place my name upon the children of Israel, and I will bless them. The I meaning God, right? So the Kohen is not the source of the blessing, it's merely the conduit. But we routinely serve as a conduit for a blessing without even thinking, right? I mean, if somebody, you come up for a meal, or you do whatever other good thing, and the person says to you, Yeshua, right? And what is the proper response? Baruch Tihyeh, right? Or if the person is a woman, if it's a man, if it's a woman, Brucha Tihyeh, right? Because Hebrew is a gendered language, right? Baruch Tihyeh. May you be blessed. Right? That's what it is. May you be blessed, not I bless you. Right? May you be blessed. But in the second verse of the Parsha, we find something very different. God says to Abraham, Avram, he's not Abraham yet, he's Abram, Ve'escha legoy gadol, ve'avarechecha, ve'agadla shimcha, I will make you a great nation, and I will bless you, and I will make your name great. Ve'hayeh bracha, you shall be a blessing. right? Not you shall bless others or the other people will be blessed by you, but you shall be a blessing, right? Not merely you shall bless. Now, what does it mean to be a blessing, right? It's not easy to understand that. So Rabbi Shoshi Levin Goldberg from JTS points us in the commentary of Sforno. Sforno lived about 500-600 years ago, as you might guess by his last name. He was Italian. He was an Italian Jew by the commentator Ovadia Sforno, and he brings up a very weird scene from the Talmud Brachot 7a. Okay, so there was actually a rabbi, Rabbi Yishmael ben Elisha, who was also the Kohen Gadol, all right, the high priest. Just coincidentally, right? He wasn't the Kohen Gadol because he was a rabbi. He wasn't a rabbi because he was a Kohen Gadol. He was a rabbi, like I am, who was also Kohen, like I am, but he was the Kohen Gadol, the high priest. And he says, so, right, the only person who ever went into the Kodesh Kodeshim, the Holy of Holies, was the high priest, and then only on Yom Kippur. So Rabbi Yishmael says, I enter the Holy of Holies to offer incense, and in it I saw the Lord of hosts, let's say God, seated upon a high and exalted throne. Okay, so I walked into the Holy of Holies. I saw God sitting on the throne. Weird, but okay. And he said to me, Yishmael, my son, bless me. God says, Yishmael, my son, bless me. Right? And he apparently was less thrown by that than I was when Father Walsh asked me to bless him. And I said to him, now, elsewhere in the Talmud, we learn that God prays, and it gives us the prayer that God says, but Ishmael reflects back to God, God's own prayer. May it be your will that your mercy overcome your anger, and may your mercy prevail over your other attributes, and may you act toward your children with the attribute of mercy, right? Because very often, mercy and justice are at war with each other, right? And if God acted towards us completely with the attribute of justice, right? We'd be absurd, right? So we don't want God to act justly towards us. We want God to be merciful towards us, and may you enter before them beyond the letter of the law, lifni mishurat hadin, which means like to go over and above. Okay, may you go over and above, right? So that's the prayer. Dear God, may your mercy overcome your other attributes. And Rabbi Ishmael goes on and says, and the Holy One nodded his head and he accepts the blessing, right? And so the Talmud goes on to say, this teaches us that you should not take the blessing of an ordinary person lightly. That is to say, if an ordinary person bless you, right? Because God asks a human being for blessing, and God accepts it, right? So if God can accept the blessing from a human being, right? All the more so should we accept a blessing from a human being, right? And there is this need, I think, for blessing in our lives. I know I told over this story. Some of you may have heard it before, some not. But when I was the rabbi in York, Pennsylvania, and one of the giant supermarkets in York had a kosher bakery, and I was the mashgiach, right? And I went in there, and if you want best practice, if it's Yosef and Mishnah, like spot check for a bakery, you gotta come in early in the morning, because that's when they're baking, right? You want to be there when they're baking. So I go in, and the assistant manager is there, somebody who, I had known and dealt, and she said, "Oh, Rabbi, you're here to bless the bakery," right? And I was like, I was a baby rabbi, right? So I said to her, "No, I don't bless the bakery. I just make sure that you're following all the procedures correctly." I think, it was today, I probably would have said, "Yes, I'm here to bless the bakery," right? Because why? Because I said to her, "No, I'm not here to bless it. I'm just here to make sure you're following the right rules." And our bakery really needs blessed. Because that's like a Pennsylvania Dutch way of saying, right? Our bakery needs to be blessed, right? Or our bakery needs to, right? Our bakery really needs blessed. And so, I disappointed her because she wanted the bakery to be blessed and not just inspected, right? And we need blessing. We need to feel blessed, right? And I said this morning, I said last week that the call of Abraham and of Noah seemed arbitrary, right? The difference is that Noah, all right, so yeah, he saved humanity. Okay, that's fine, right? But, he didn't really do what Abraham, right? I mean, God says to Noah, "I'm going to kill everybody but you and your family, so build an ark." Okay, I would hope most of us, God, you sure you really want to do that? Sure there must be some other good people who, no, it's like, he was only following old rules, and seriously, just following orders is no excuse. It's no excuse, right? But Abraham, right? God says, "I'm going to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. Ashofet kol haaretz lo yaseh mishpat," right? "Shall not the judge of the world act justly?" Right? So his call is arbitrary, but he does something with his call, right? And, I mentioned a few weeks ago, and, the Levavadi Rebbe said, if you see something wrong in the world, it's something that God has left for you to do. Right? All right. God has left something for me to do. I still got to do it. Right? And that is up to me. It's not up to God. It's not up to God because I'm not a robot. I can choose to do what God called me to do, or I could choose not to, right? And he acts with justice and with mercy, right? And he's concerned about more than just his family. He's concerned about all of humanity, right? And there's a very famous book, Man's Search for Meaning, right? If it's written today, it would be called Humanity's Search for Meaning, right? Called Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, a famous psychologist, a German Jew who was a concentration camp survivor, right? And he wrote that having a sense of purpose is what helps people to endure the most severe hardships. Again, it's not one-on-one correspondence. It doesn't mean that everybody who survived, who had a sense of purpose, survived, but it helped you to survive even the most severe hardships. And I think many of us can look back on our own lives and say, yeah, I went through something really, really difficult and it was horrible, but I had a sense of purpose and I'm still here, right? And it's because of that sense of purpose that I'm able to be still here, right? And Abraham knew that his purpose was to spread the knowledge of God, who is a God of justice, right? So it's not just monotheism, it's ethical monotheism. And so when we talk about Abraham being a blessing, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam are, again, not always, right? I mean, far be it from me to say that every Christian and every Muslim has acted with justice or mercy to the Jews, right? And often quite the opposite, right? But like Menachem HaMeiri wrote in the 13th century, these are umot hagdurot b'darkei hadat. These are nations that are restrained by the ways of religion, right? I mean, in other words, and I think that that's really true, okay? I mean, being religious is no guarantee that you're going to be a good person. But I think many of these people would have been even worse without religion, right? I mean, I had this argument with my dad all the time, okay? And, my dad would say religion has been the cause of so many wars. Maybe the world would be better off if there never had been religion. But how many, think of the positive role of religion in the world, right? Think of, like, in our own life, the lifetime of most of us anyway, Dr. Martin Luther King, right? And we call it Dr. Martin Luther King. He was Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. And we always leave off that Reverend part, right? Think of, if you asked me who were the figures for the greatest good in the world in your lifetime, right? I would name Dr. King, Reverend King. I would name Pope John Paul II and Pope Francis, and so far Pope Leo, right? Forces for good. So yes, religion has caused a lot of pain, but it's also caused a lot of good, right? But so how do we be a blessing to each other? Acting the way Rabbi Ishmael asked God to act, right? Act towards each other with mercy and with compassion and always striving to go above and beyond. And in that way, we can all be a blessing to each other. Shabbat Shalom.
Who gets to record?
Yeah.